Hey, everybody, it's Jason with Kentucky Sustainable Living. Shelly and Jake are out. They can't make it tonight, but we've got Jeff from the Everyday Prepper on with me tonight. And Jeff's camera is not working, but we've got audio from him. Jeff, thanks for, excuse me, thanks for coming on tonight. I guess we'll start off, Jeff. Kind of tell us what you've got going on, what the Everyday Prepper is.
Oh, it'll be my pleasure, Jason. Thanks for having me on tonight. The Everyday Prepper started this business a few years ago just because I noticed that with all the vendors out there and prepping and homesteading, that there were some things being missed. Things like old tools, things like high quality garden tools, oil lamps, and I like to get oil lamps that are the older ones, get them cleaned up and get them ready to resell. And just a variety of things that I just thought other folks weren't fulfilling the need for. So I started the business, and I'm trying to help people out and get those areas filled for them.
Awesome. Yeah, oil lamps is one of those things. It's hard to find some of the older lamps and stuff like that and parts. I've got a few old ones, and then I've got some newer ones, and I like the older ones better. But I wish the darn smell sometimes on those things just gets to people.
Yeah, and that all depends on what you use. If you're not using ultra purified kerosene or a good high quality lamp oil, you're going to have a lot more smell than you would if you're using a good high quality lamp oil, and that's what we always recommend.
Yeah. Well, now what else? You've also got old tools and stuff like that also that you old hand tools and everything.
You have to find old hand tools, bit braces, hand saws, drills. I've even got shingle froes and stuff like that. And occasionally I have some good axes or 2-man saws even. We get cleaned up and get ready for folks. And, it's just when people think about homesteading or prepping, they think past the food and protection and everything else. A lot of times they don't think, do they have the hand tools they need to survive in a world that didn't have electricity? So that's, I like to educate people on that and maybe, enlighten them to some things, some areas they might be a little weak on, and then help them get those areas filled.
Oh yeah. And that's something. I'm a contractor. I'm using tools all the time, but it's kind of one of those things. If you don't have anything to charge your batteries with, you're kind of dead in the water. And a lot of people really don't think about that. It's like, yeah, I'm going to cut this board. I'm going to grab my skill saw or my battery operated skill saw. And what do you do then? I mean, I've got older hand saws and stuff, but a lot of people don't think about it. They're like, oh, if I need to cut this, I'll just grab my DeWalt. Well, it's funny. I got one of my Milwaukee shirts on. So I'm a Milwaukee fanboy. So
yeah, that's good stuff. Good stuff as long as you got power.
Yeah, exactly. I'm mostly Milwaukee, but my miter saws are all DeWalt. I just like the DeWalt miter saws better.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, a lot of people don't think too that, in any kind of an emergency, you might have to do some repairs to your home right away, and without power, you're going to be out of luck. And it's when I have an opportunity to do a class on the old tools, I always ask people, I'll say, how many of you have a claw hammer? And most everybody has a claw hammer. And then I'll go through a lot of things, and they'll say, well, how many of you have a good selection of nails for that claw hammer?
Yep.
And it drops down to just a very small percentage in the class will have the nails that they need to do some home repairs or anything like that in an emergency.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got buckets and boxes of nails, screws, bolts, everything that we got left over. I put it in and put it in a bucket or a bag, and I've just got bins and bins of that stuff. It's ridiculous how much stuff I've got. So
we'll see if the grid ever goes down. You're going to have a hardware store right there, Jason.
That and one of the things my dad when growing up, my dad would fix anything at the house. Plumbing, electric, HVAC, all that stuff he would fix. And when we grew up, town was a 25-minute drive, something like that. So he always bought extra stuff instead of just going and buying that one PVC just to have it. And I kind of do the same thing, but I'm going to clean out his basement and his shop. He told me, he's like, take all that stuff, organize it. I mean, there, I've got a 7x14 enclosed trailer, and it's probably two full trailer loads of just nails, screws, plumbing parts, electrical parts, all that kind of stuff. Not to mention all the lumber that he's got down
Hmm.
there. And I'm going to bring it up here. He told me, he said, take it up there, organize it to where you and your brother can use it. And then he said, use it at my house when we need it. So I will. I'll have pretty much a stinking Lowe's when it's done.
Oh, there you go. But, another thing a lot of people are short on. I always ask folks, how many of you have replacement handles for all your wood handled tools?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have replacement handles for them, and we ever get to a situation where the store's not open anymore, you're going to need something like a draw knife and a spoke shave to help you make those tools. So, and you can't find those in Walmart, can't find them, in a lot of hardware stores now. So I try to find used spoke shaves and draw knives too, and have them for folks, because those things are going to be you're not going to be able to live without them if you ever got to try to make handles without power.
Oh yeah, I would hate. I've never made a handle, but it looks like it's an art form to make one of those.
It is to do it right, but in when you're hungry and you're worried about keeping the garden going, I think that'll be a motivator to just get something that you could use.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, I've got tons of stuff like that. And one thing I would like now, can you show people how to set the teeth and sharpen the teeth like on a two-man crosscut saw?
Oh yeah, I can certainly talk about that. That's an art form in itself. And I'd love to have the opportunity sometime to demonstrate that to folks. But I will try to have a crosscut saw there in my booth, and anybody who wants to talk about that can stop on by. And one of the bad things is, out of all the crosscut saws that I get, the majority of them have never been sharpened correctly. And I figure
Really?
that's why so many of them end up rusting away in a barn or a garage someplace. Because if you don't have them sharpened correctly and don't have the set right, you're not going to do anything. And I think people just get frustrated and don't use them anymore. If they just do a little bit of research, they could find out how to do it and get the right tools to do it, and they'd have a fine piece of equipment then.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it goes with it with everything. I mean, even your power tools. If you got a dull blade on your skill saw, you're just fighting it the whole time. You can swap that thing out, and then everything
Yep.
just cuts like butter. So just imagine if you're actually doing it by hand, how much a good sharp saw would come in handy. I That's one of the things I would love to learn is how to set the teeth and sharpen like a crosscut saw. That would be something that I want to really really watch and stuff like that. Can uh can you show people how to the proper way to sharpen axes and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. And a lot of people don't take the time to just learn a few things you have to do it right, and so they end up making a lot of mistakes on them. And a lot of people will take axes and try to use them for things they're not designed for, and then they
Yeah.
end up damaging the head, and then they've got problems there. But that gets back to another thing in the old tools. Getting the hand crank grind bench grinders that you clip on the end, you screw on the end of your bench, and what do you got to do if you don't have that bench grinder that you're always dependent on to get some grinding done real quick? So
Oh
I
yeah.
always try to find some of them and have them on hand too.
That would be awesome to have a bench grinder like that. So I know my dad. He showed me when he would hoe the garden, he would always keep a file in his back pocket, and every so
Yep.
often he'd pull that file out and hit that hoe. And man, you could flat and just cut the snot out of your fingers with that hoe. It stayed so stinking sharp.
Well, and that's some of the garden hose that I sell. I've got a half moon hoe and a diamond scuffle hoe made by DeWitt. And reason I got into them, I found out a long time ago with our gardening, if I was ever having to garden and feed my family out of it, if I was trying to do it with a hoe from Walmart, I would end up with a broken back and starving,
Oh yeah.
because it takes entirely too much effort. The hose I got have nice long handles on them. You can stand straight up, and like you were saying, they are sharp.
Yep.
You can cut with them, and it makes a world of difference.
We got a question real quick, Jeff. Besides the grinder and stone, what about dressing that stone?
And that's if you have any kind of a grinder with the stone on it, you definitely want to be ready to dress it and keep it in good shape. And but in an emergency, you could always find a way to get that thing dressed up. You could be a little bit inventive, and I know I've found them. And I just find a piece of sharp steel and get it down there and hold it in the guide, and it takes a little bit longer, but you can get that thing dressed up. And when you've got nothing else, even if you have a stone that's not in real good shape, you can make that work.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Forrest has got a question. We're going to switch gears. We'll come back to the tools here in a minute, Jeff. But Forrest wants to know, Jeff, can you explain the difference between a bug out bag and a get home bag? And I guess before you answer that, we're going to segue in. What you're going to be speaking at the festival is how to get home in an emergency situation. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to talk about if you're so many miles from the house on what you need to do to get home, to get back to your house in an emergency situation, right?
That's correct. And, I got started in that number of years ago. My wife and I were down in North Carolina at a prepping event. And on the way home, she said, if something happened right now. And we had just, at that prepping event, we got to listen to Dr. William Fortune, who wrote the book 1 Second After,
Yeah.
and that series. And she said, if something happened right now, would we be able to make it home? And I started thinking about it. And, I thought with my experience, I might stand a chance, but I didn't know if she was going to be able to pull through because we were still probably 250 miles away. And then shortly after that, we ended up having daughters that were going off to school and going off to work. And all of a sudden we had 4 out of our 5 daughters were living or going to school over 50 miles away from home. So that's when I really got into the getting home in an emergency and really started looking at it. And as I Googled it, I came up with a couple 100,000 hits, and everybody wanted to tell you how to do a get home bag. Nobody wanted to tell you how to actually get home in an emergency. So that's why I came up with this class.
Yeah.
And that's what Forrest asked, with the difference between the bug out bag and the get home bag. And that's, I usually stir things up with this because a lot of people disagree with me. But a bug out bag, if you're bugging out, you've got to be ready for anything. Depending on how far your bug out location is, if you have one, and whether or not you have anything cached along the way, you're going to have to be able to live out of your bug out bag. Now, get home bag is more tailored to the distance you're going to have to travel. Where you're going, and on a day-to-day basis, if I have to go into work, I know I'm going to have to go 48 miles to get home. I know how long it's going to take me if I'm walking. I know how long it's going to take me if I got the folding bike in the back of the truck. Be a little bit quicker, but I always make sure I have enough for the maximum number of days it's going to take me in that get home bag. So you can actually, depending on how far you are, you can go a lot lighter with a get home bag than you might be able to do with the bug out bag.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then I'm guessing roller skates would not be optimal. It depends, I guess.
And if you could roller skate, you could probably give that a try. I know if I tried to roller skate, I wouldn't have to worry about getting home. I'd end up laying in a ditch someplace with a broken leg. But somebody who's good on them, anything works. When you consider that, average person, if they're walking on fairly flat terrain, you can figure they're going to do maybe 3 miles an hour walking. If you have a bicycle, you're going to be able to go about 9 miles an hour. So it's going to be considerably faster. Roller skates, I don't know. We've never tried, but maybe we could get together here and do a little test there at the event and see how far people can roller skate in an hour.
We could get some of the girls from Sonic to come practice.
There you go.
So, but and my thoughts kind of on the bug out bag as opposed to the get home bag. Really, from what I've seen, the bug out bag is to get you from where you live to your bug out location. You do have to be prepared for a certain amount of things, but there's a lot of overlap in that too. So,
there is.
I see a ton of people that it's like, oh yeah, I've got my bug out bag and the stinking thing weighs 80 or 90 pounds. It's like, crap. I mean, if you got a bug out place, you ought to have most of your stuff stored at your bug out location as opposed to trying to carry everything in a kitchen sink on your back, because I'm looking at it, you need to get to your bug out location as fast as you can. And of course, you need to get home as fast as you can too. So I just see a lot of people when they're building these bags, it's like, man, these things are stinking heavy as all get out. But I look at it also is I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. I can always ditch gear along the way. You know, if you start walking with a big bag, like in your get home bag, you're anticipating a certain time that you're going to get there, and that thing is getting heavy, and you're like, I really don't need X thing in this bag. Let's chuck it, and then I can get home a little bit faster and not kill myself. So
You're right. You know, another thing I suggest to people too is have their equipment in their bag modularized. See if I can say that right. But you know, if you use compression sacks or little dry bags or something like that, you can kind of get your equipment divided up. If you know, if you got some winter clothing in there, if you got in the winter time, if maybe you're wanting to take something to heat up some water or something like that, you can have that separate in a sack. So if you got to go quick, you know, you don't need that. Grab those bags out and ditch them, and then go on. So you can travel a lot later. Another thing that I'm big on is making sure that you don't have unnecessary items, because, you know, I've seen people who carry 4 knives and 2 hatchets in their bug out bag or their get home bag. Yeah. And, you know, that's having that redundant capability, those backups is good, but you got to consider, does it just make sense to have that much backup?
Oh yeah, and I mean, some people are packing like they're gonna stop every night and build a daggum log cabin in the woods, and it's like, man, either one of those scenarios, bugging out or getting home. I mean, you want to come in if you need to build a quick shelter. Don't spend 4 or 5 hours building some kind of shelter. You know, a Taj Mahal. Build something that's going to get you through the night, because you're probably not going to be sleeping too many hours either way. Get a little bit of rest and then keep on moving.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, people got to realize too, whether you're bugging out or you're getting home, those first couple of days, you're not going to want to worry about eating anything hot or cooking a meal or anything like that. You're going to want to keep the odors to a minimum, because you're bugging out. You've got a reason you're getting away from the area you're in.
Yeah.
And getting home for us, we are going from a city out in the country where we live. So it's very important to clear that city within the first couple hours of any kind of event.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I keep a bag in my truck. If I'm typically where I'm working, I'm usually 15 miles away from the house. So I've got enough stuff, even if I don't have my big bag, I've got enough stuff in my truck that I know I could get home, you know, on a typical day. If I go farther than about 50 miles away from the house, I've got a good sized bag that'll have everything I need. And it's modular also. If I'm going a lot farther than 50 miles from the house, I'll put more stuff in the truck and have it with me. So I kind of modularize stuff like that depending on how far I'm going to go. But honestly, I don't like going too far from the house personally.
Yeah, definitely. And then too, you know, we cover things like people picking their routes, because people will, you know, they'll go the same route from work to home every day. But is that actually the shortest route, or is that just the quickest when you're in a vehicle? You got to make sure if you're walking, you're going to want to go, you know, as few miles as possible. So know what the shortest route is. So in the event you have to walk, you're going as few miles as possible, instead of, you know, folks, when they're driving, they got to get from point A to point B as quick as they can. So they might not want to take that gravel road that cuts across country and shortens the trip and shortens the mileage.
Oh yeah, and with both my kids, you know, we live 300 yards from one of the railroad tracks, and my parents live close to the railroad tracks. And I've told both of them, I'm like, what's the fastest way to get to your grandparents' house? And I showed them, I'm like, that's the same train track. And I said, it goes in pretty much a straight line. And they're like, we never knew that. So I told them, I'm like, if you ever have to get there quick and in a straight line, you can walk down the stinking railroad tracks and it leads right to their backyard. And it kind of blew them away. They're like, that's awesome.
You know, and there's a lot of things too. You've got railroad tracks, you've got power lines. A lot of places are are converting old railroad tracks into bike paths.
Yeah.
And, if you got one of those and know where it is in an emergency, you're not going to see anybody out on the bike path.
Oh, yeah.
So I always recommend run into as few people as possible, and you won't have any problems.
Let me see. When I was living 50 miles from my parents, I sold my cruiser motorcycle and got a 300cc dual sport. That would be a pretty good little deal, having a motorcycle to get home, assuming it didn't get fried if we had an EMP or something like that.
Yep, and that's always a chance you're going to take, though. If or you get an older one that's running on points and condenser, you won't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And then, well, what about having multiple routes to get home? Touch on that and everything, because a lot of people, are dead set. If they've gotten past, I'm not going to drive this road, I'm going to take the shorter route. They should pretty much have a backup plan too to that, shouldn't they?
They should always have several routes planned, and that's another thing. People are, they're in a hurry to get to work, hurry to come home. I always recommend that they take a day every now and then and veer off the normal path and see what the side roads are that run parallel to their main route. Find those other ways. And they should always have a map pack with them, with a map for the areas they're traveling through that shows all the roads. And then I know in Ohio, we're fortunate the county engineers put out a map for each county that shows every road in the county. And somebody told me here back in July, they thought that Kentucky did the same thing. And, if you get those things, they're either free or you charge a couple bucks. You're going to know every road in the county. So if you have to get off the main trail, you can pull out, or your main route, you can pull one of those out and find the best way around it. But in an emergency, you really ought to know what those routes are, so you don't have to stop and do that.
Oh yeah, and too many people stick to the main roads. I mean, with me being a contractor, I'm in subdivisions a bunch and stuff like that, and I know in the area all the quick little shortcuts, how to cut through this subdivision to get to this place, and that's an asset right there. I mean, there's a million different ways to get to my house from actually in town, and I know, I would say I know 100% of those just because I've lived in the area my whole life.
Yeah, and people don't give a lot of consideration to that. They need to figure out how long it's going to take them to get home, and then figure out the areas they're going through, because you ought to have some kind of idea how long it's going to take those areas to deteriorate if we ever go into a grid down situation, whatever the cause may be, or you've got civil unrest. Because I'll tell you, criminals are like a big trout in a trout stream. They're going to go where the biggest flow of food is, and that's how trout get so big. Criminals are going to do the same thing, and the people who decide to go the wrong way in a situation like that. And if you have people walking along a main highway, it's a lot easier for them to go wait for the people to come there than some back road or a bike path or a train track where they might see one or two people in several days. They don't have the discipline to wait out there for that. They want to get out there and get some action, so they're going to go where the people are. The big thing is for our folks is to figure out where the people aren't and go that way.
Yeah, and I would say time of day also plays a big part of it too, don't you think? What you wouldn't want to move through one area at night, but you might want to move through one area during the night. So
yeah, and there's you got to consider, if there's no lights, activity at night's going to change a lot. So you always want to consider what those areas are going to be like that, and which time of day it's going to be best to go through them. And the miscreants in society don't necessarily get up early too, so a lot of people don't think of that. If you're moving in the night into early morning, you probably do pretty good in most areas. And one thing too I like to bring up to folks is the art of negotiation and how important it is, because if you're moving down the road trying to get home, and is situation worse in neighborhoods in certain areas like our area where we are out in the country, it'd be very easy for us to shut down our road on each end. If you run into a situation like that, if you run into people who got a roadblock set up, you're not going to be able to force your way through, shoot your way through. It's pretty much an area where you got to be humble and just think about what you're saying, talk to them, make them realize that you're a human and you just want to get home to your family, and do a little talking and say, hey, I don't want to confront you in any way. Could you tell me what path I could take to get around you that you wouldn't have a problem with?
Yeah.
People need to think about that in advance a little bit. What are they going to do if they run into a situation like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, most people are just going to be. They got that in their mind. They're going to be gun ho, and I'm just going to tell these people I just live right down the road, and by God, I'm coming through whether they like it or not. And that's not the way to do it. I mean, you'll probably wind up with a blood splatter on the side of the road, probably.
Yeah, because if we got our roadblock and you run into me talking down there, you better believe you're probably going to have about three red dots on your chest. So
Yeah.
you gotta, you gotta consider all these things and not go too John Wayne on your way home.
Oh yeah, and then you've also got to be careful. I mean, we live and there's a lot of farmland around us. You got to worry about too cutting through people's crops and stuff like that, and everything. I mean, there's a whole lot to think about, and I don't think people put a whole lot of thought in it. Sometimes they're just like, I've got my bag. I know where the house is, and I know where I work. I'll figure it out on the way, and that's probably one of the worst things to do.
Oh yeah, and they're something that people don't think of either because they're in such a hurry to get home or get to work. But if you see a little fruit stand, somebody selling their vegetables, you see people are having yard sales all the time, stop and talk to those folks along the way, because you never know if you get in a bad situation. I think people are a lot more likely to help you out if they've seen your face before.
Yeah.
Try to develop a relationship with a couple spots. If there's a mom and pop store on the way, stop in there and buy a couple things every now and then and get to know the folks and let them get to know you, so maybe they remember you.
Oh yeah. Hey Tag, I appreciate Tag jumping in. He's at Midwest Preparedness Festival right now. They kicked it off with speakers today.
Outstanding. Where is that?
It's in Kansas is where it's at.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and that's a lot what you said as far as getting to know people along the route and everything. Because if you're a familiar face as opposed to somebody they've never seen, they're more likely going to help you out than just some schmuck that they've never seen before.
Yeah, and two, take the time on your travels to find out where your good water sources are, if there are any. Don't get yourself desperate and then end up, you think you found a good stream, but you didn't take the time to check it out and find out it's running through a pasture with hogs or cows in it, just upstream a little bit. Hopefully you're going to have stuff to get that water cleaned up anyway, but don't take a chance. I know on my way home, if I'm in the office in Columbus, on my way home, I got 3 little creeks that I can go by that are coming straight out of the hills and are spring fed. I know where they are, and that's where I'm going to plan on taking on water.
Awesome. Oh yeah, I mean it's a daunting task, and that I mean you can really get wrapped around the axles on it, or like I said, a lot of people will just be like, "Oh, I'll figure it out on when it happens and everything." But it's you really need to spend a lot of time, and that goes in too with other stuff that I don't think is super sexy. Everybody wants to talk about a get home bag and a bug out bag because they get to buy stuff. And they check it off their list. Well, I bought this for my bug out bag, and I bought this for my get home bag, and I've got a map. But you hadn't even looked at the stupid map. Buying that stuff and everything is sexy, and you can pound your chest and be like, I've got my get home bag. Well, how many times did you? How much time did you spend making the route to get home from where you're going to be, and everything? They just don't spend the time. And it's not sexy, just like medical stuff is not sexy. And to a lot of people, ham radio is not sexy. But that's a whole part of being in a total preparedness mindset. And I can see where they wouldn't spend time. How long should somebody spend on getting their routes done? And I know you're going to say depends, because it depends on how far away somebody is on doing that.
Well, it's knowing your routes home and your backup routes is critical. You can't live without it. And I put that into planning. And I always stress the importance of planning. because I tell folks, if you don't have a plan, if you just say I'm going to remember how to do all that, well, you don't have a plan. Then you just have a thought, and thoughts can disappear. And if you've got family dependent on you getting home, they're going to want to know what routes you're taking, how you're going to get home. What if they find that maybe they got a tractor or something still running? They're going to come out and try to get you part way. You need to just take a few minutes, put it in writing so the rest of the family can see, so everybody knows what you're doing. And so you can look at it every now and then and see if there's something you got to change on it. It might jog your memory to have that. And I tell folks, if I ask people, hey, you want to go out and buy some guns and ammo this weekend, they'll be there. So, hey, you want to go shopping for freeze dried food? Oh, they'll be there. But if you say, hey, you want to get together and work on our get home plans or our shelter activation plan, you're going to hear crickets. Nobody's going to want to do that. But those are some of the most important things out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we got this. Can you walk 40 miles in shoes you typically wear or have on hand? That's a big thing. I mean, a lot of guys working in the office and they're wearing whatever dress shoes or hey dudes or whatever they're called. They're wearing that. Can you walk 40 miles in a pair of dress shoes?
No, and that's I'm lucky because I usually got my New Balance on and I can walk a good distance in them. But one of the big things you run into, especially when you start getting if you have to get your get home plan and get home bag for your kids, how many of them are wearing flip flops most of the time today?
Yeah.
And I know I used to give our girls the heck all the time because, they're traveling all over the place. All they got is flip flops in the car. And then finally one of them ran off the road in the wintertime with just flip flops. And then, I was the dumbest guy in the world till that happened. Then she figured out I wasn't quite as dumb as she thought I was.
Oh yeah.
And then after that, they started carrying a pair of boots in the car too.
Oh yeah. And I'm lucky too. I typically wear Merrells all the time for work, and that's what I wear. I wear Merrells 90% of the time, and that I can walk wherever. Tag's heading out. He's got a live at 7:00. So Thanks for coming in, Tag. Wearing fuzzy house shoes to Wally World. And that is, and I mean, I wear, like I said, I wear my Merrells 90% of the time. And I'm bad about every now and then I wear flip-flops, but most of the time, the only time I wear flip-flops is if I'm running down to the gas station a mile from the house. I'm like, I can make it a mile in a pair of flip-flops.
Yeah, you probably do that in bare feet if you had to.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's not much going to stop me from getting back to my house in an emergency. So.
Well, I like to point out too that there's certain things you need, and all the Googling I've done for bug out bags, I've seen some of the most ridiculous things these people are saying you need in a bug out bag. Saw this one little fella from the city when I first started checking this out, and he was telling you how to get home in an emergency in an urban environment. And as he's walking along, I kept hearing this rattle, rattle, rattle. And when he started showing what he had in his bug out bag, he had a little plastic pill bottle with some finishing nails in there in case he had to build a shelter on the way home. And I'm thinking, okay, where are you going to stop in the city and build a shelter that you're going to be able to use finishing nails? Finishing nails aren't going to do you a whole lot of good anyway. Yeah. But then I just started looking. There's more and more stuff that you got folks out there online are telling people they need that are just ridiculous. They're missing out on the good stuff. In the case of feet, you're going to want to have a extra socks in there. You're going to want to have some good quality moleskin. And when you start blistering up, I'm not saying if you blister, we'll tell you when you blister. You're going to want moleskin to put over that to protect your feet so you can keep going. And there's just a variety of things that people don't even think about. And a lot of these folks online just aren't pointing that stuff out.
Oh, yeah. I guess that guy was going to put up trim in his shelter with the finish nails.
Yeah, and that's, and he said at most he was going to have an 8-hour walk home. And I'm thinking, what, are you going to stop at 4 hours and build a shelter and spend the night and take another 4 the next day? It just didn't make much sense to me.
That's, 8 hours. I mean, that's, less than a typical work day for most people. Today I probably walked, I don't know how many steps I walked, but I know I walked probably half the way to my house. So
Yeah.
just walking back and forth doing stuff. So 8 hours wouldn't be horrible. I could do that probably. So I mean, I typically do it anyway every day.
Well, until you
So
got to consider that first burst of walking you do is going to be fueled by adrenaline too.
well,
The situation that's causing you to do that's going to have you fired up a little bit, and then your concern about getting home is going to have you fired up. What's going to be bad is whenever you do take a break and maybe you catch a few hours sleep, you get ready to go again. You're going to be in a bad way, and that's why I always tell people make sure you've got some kind of anti-inflammatory with you, ibuprofen, whatever your favorite is, and start taking that right when you get started.
yeah. Oh yeah, and stay ahead of it instead of fighting it the whole time. And yeah, Forrest says the trunk of my car is like a store. I can take or leave different items depending on what is needed. And that's kind of the concept. I've done a lot of stuff. Like my truck toolbox is chock full of tools, but one section of it is different clothes. I mean, I keep no matter the time of year, I keep a medium weight jacket. I keep a pair of non-insulated Carhartt overalls and a pair of insulated Carhartt overalls. They live in my toolbox year round because, I mean, when we're coming into spring and coming into fall, you never know. I mean, it might be, 40 degrees in the morning. It'll wind up being 70, middle of the day. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times you're throwing your overalls on in the morning and stripping them off by lunchtime. So I keep stuff like that in my truck. My overalls live in my truck all the time.
And I was glad to see Forrest put that up there because I saw his last name, and us Smiths like to be prepared, and you can always count on Smiths to do it right. So thank you for that, Forrest.
Oh yeah. Now Forrest, you'll meet Forrest at the festival. He's going to be up there. So
Good deal.
but yeah, I mean, there's just tons of stuff that people just don't think about. Keeping stock, yeah, it takes up some extra room. I mean, I keep a poncho liner 90% of the time in my
Mm-hmm.
truck also. And when the weather starts turning, as a matter of fact, my wife just threw a couple blankets in the car, and she keeps them in her SUV now. And then when it starts warming back up, she'll pull them out. And one thing is going to ball games. You never know. I mean, especially a ball game that starts when the sun's up and then it starts
Mm-hmm.
getting dark. I mean, you can freeze to death out there watching a baseball game or a football game, and it all depends when that sun goes down. You're cold as can be.
Well, especially
So,
this time of year, it can change on you quick.
oh yeah, and this time of year right now, when I go out first thing in the morning and the sun hadn't come up yet, I've been in the summertime. I work in short sleeves. I throw a long sleeve T-shirt on when I'm out letting the animals out doing feeding and stuff in the morning before I go to work. And most of the time, by the time the sun comes up, I've stripped out of that T-shirt, that long sleeve T-shirt, and I'm back in a short sleeve T-shirt.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what else can people? What else are some stuff that you see people forget about when they're planning on how to get home?
Well, I see people too. They're just not thinking ahead because, they may have some backup clothing, some backup socks, and you ask them what they're going to do with, their socks get wet and they change them out, and it's I'm going to throw them in my bag. Well, unless you've got an unlimited supply of socks, you better hang those things on your pack someplace, get them dried out, so you're going to be ready for the next change. Same thing if they're not prepared for rain or anything like that. If it's cold and you get wet, you could go downhill real quick. So you've got to be prepared to try to stay dry one way or another. And if you do get wet, you better have a plan in place to get some dry clothes on or dry out what you have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you can get hypothermia in as warm as what 55, 60 degrees. You can go
Yeah.
hypothermia.
Oh yeah, and it can take you down quick, and you add a little bit of wind along with that.
Oh yeah.
Sunburn, sunburn, that's another good one. And along with that, too, if you're traveling in the summertime, you're going to want some sunglasses if you're going to be out there all day. If you're planning on moving during the day, sunburn can be bad too. I recommend, people try to stay as covered as possible, even with just light clothing to sort of protect your skin. Uh, depending on the situation you're in, if you're going through any kind of a hostile area, anything you put on that smells good could be bad, because people will be surprised how hypersensitive they get to things once they're doing without. Which brings us up to another subject: smokers. If you're smoking, you got to be very careful where you do that. That's as bad as cooking food. The first couple of days of a grid down situation, anything like that. If somebody's gone a day or two without cigarettes and you got them, you light one up, they're going to be smelling them.
Oh yeah,
So
the zombies will be coming.
Odor discipline is very important too.
Oh yeah, and going back on the sunburn stuff, we do a lot of kitchen and bathroom remodels. So generally, I'm inside 90% of the time doing work. But anytime I'm working out here at the house in the summertime, I've got a light long sleeve T-shirt on, like a cotton T-shirt or one of the fishing shirts, just because years of doing concrete work. I mean, I was out just blistering in the sun every day, and I'm like, I'm tired of the sun being on me. But those fishing shirts are awesome, and they actually keep you cooler, honestly, because when you sweat and that breeze blows through,
Yep.
I mean, it evaporates it, and it's amazing on how cool you stay. And plus, you don't rip I mean, if you're out cutting limbs and doing stuff like that, you're just not ripping your arms up when a limb runs across you. You got some protection right there. So I'm a big fan of long sleeve T-shirts when you're working out in the woods and doing stuff like that. I don't know how many times it saved my arms from being bloody.
Another thing along the lines of protecting your body, whether you're getting home or bugging out, you're going to want to have a good pair of quality leather gloves in there.
Yeah.
You need to protect your hands, especially if you have to start going out and going through the bush. You're going to have to use your hands to move things out of the way. You don't want to sacrifice your hands, get scratched up by anything or get splinters in them, because, if you don't have a way to take care of that right away, that could take you out quick too if you get an infection in there. So whatever you can do to protect your body, you need to make sure you have that stuff with you.
Oh, yeah. And I'm bad about not wearing gloves at work just because I lose some of the dexterity. But
Yeah.
My hands are eat up all the time, and I can come in and the kids, I'll say something to one of my kids, and I'll touch the back of his neck or something like that, and he's like, "Your hands are horribly rough," and they're like, "Don't touch me. Go put some lotion on or something." And I'm like, "I'm not putting lotion on. I want these hands rough, so when you grab a hold of something, you don't have baby soft hands." So then Forrest said he's talking about the 4-way keys for the commercial water hydrants.
Yep, and the water bibs on buildings and stuff. That's a good thing to carry if you're going through an area like that, because you're always, you're going to be able to get some water out of there, at least at the beginning anyway.
Yep, and you can also, with a pair of needle nose pliers, open those up. So
yep,
I've learned that the hard way when we were doing concrete and doing a lot of commercial stuff. I bought a bunch of those keys, and we had them in every truck and every job trailer. But the stupid things would grow legs and walk off, and I'm like, I know
they
bought
always
a dozen.
do.
Yeah, I was like, I bought a dozen of these things the other day, and I can't find any of them right now. So, but yeah, needle nose pliers will turn those on. It kind of mars it up a little bit, but who really cares? So,
Well, yeah, in that situation, as long as you can get some water out, you're good.
Yeah. Here, Bruce with Leather Homestead is talking head net for bugs.
Yeah, that's definitely a way to go, especially if you're in an area with a lot of bugs. Something like that's good because it's not going to have any scent like a bug repellent would have. So that's a definite way to go right there, especially if you have some clothing that's going to pretty much cover you up. You can use that to cover up your head. If you have to, you can put gloves on and keep your hands protected. Because I've been in some situation with flies and mosquitoes where they just eat you alive.
Oh yeah, they're horrible. Right, even still right now they're horrible. You go out and you're just like, oh, man, I should have put some stinking bug spray on for sure. So, what's probably the most overlooked thing that you've seen that people overlook about getting home, and a get home bag and or a bug out bag that people just kind of forget about? that's glaring obvious when you state it. That it's
Toilet
that
paper.
moment. That toilet paper. Yeah.
I have seen dozens and dozens of people telling you what you need in a get home bag, and they totally leave out toilet paper or anything that could be used like that. And you know what? If you're out there walking, sooner or later, you're going to need it.
Oh yeah. Now I keep, and I don't do it as far as for the bathroom, but I keep it the baby wipes. I keep
Yep.
a pack or two of those in my truck just because if you're working outside, you're cutting lumber, doing that kind of stuff, man, it feels great to grab two or three of those baby wipes, wipe your face down, wipe the back of your neck down, and it's just it's amazing how much better you feel like at lunchtime just to wipe down. So there's
We,
always a pack or two of baby wipes.
along those lines, that's I always have baby wipes too because that's they serve a variety of purposes. But one of the things you just mentioned, and I recommend to people, to be aware of if they've got a possible couple day journey home, they gotta have something like that. So if they start getting to the point where they feel down, they think they're not going to make it, things aren't going right, they're not traveling as fast as they can. Stop someplace, take a rest, find yourself a good and secluded area off the beaten path, and just take a minute, get your baby wipes out, give yourself a little baby wipe bath, make yourself feel better. Another thing is you get one of those little travel toothbrushes and just a little thing of and I don't even recommend toothpaste. You get a little thing of mouthwash. That way you don't need to waste any water rinsing your mouth out. But brush your teeth. You're going to want to maintain good oral hygiene too, because that could cause all kinds of problems for you. And just make yourself feel better.
Oh yeah.
That could really boost your morale. People don't think about the morale issue a lot, and unless if they're a little bit hardened and they can just force their way through, they're going to have morale issues. And I suggest this for a lot of folks and a lot of moms, especially, have some pictures of your kids, have some pictures of your family. Maybe get, just one day ask the kids, I'm going to have you write me a letter and I'm not going to look at it, but just tell me, why you like to have me here.
Yeah.
What do I do for you? Why do you love me? Have them write that note. Don't even look at it. Just throw that in the bag. So if they start getting run down to the point where they think they're not going to move, especially with the mama bears, they get something like that out there to get them fired up again. That can get them moving again.
Oh yeah. And also calmness.
Calmness.
Yeah, stay calm. Don't freak out. That's one of the biggest things. Stay calm in any situation that goes on.
And that's one thing that folks are going to have a real hard time doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then another thing that we really hadn't touched on, and I admit it too, I'm not in the best shape in the world, but a lot of people are like, well, I've got a 30-mile trip from my house to work every day. How many of those people think that they could really walk 30 miles? I mean, can you walk 30 miles? Is it going to take you one day? Is it going to take you 2 days? Or is it going to take you 30 days and you're only going to be able to walk a mile a day? So that's one of the things, physical fitness. And I hate to be rude about it, but get your ass off the couch and start walking and see what you can do and build up that endurance. I mean, if the only walking you do is walking from your house to your car and you get in your car and then drive to work and you walk from the parking lot into the office, if that's the only walking you do every day, most likely you're going to have a hard time walking back home.
Definitely, and folks, that's another area where folks, whenever they go any place, they always park as close to the building as they can. If they go shopping or go to school or go to the office, park out there at the end of the parking lot and walk in. Just get yourself a little more exercise. And we had a rude awakening several years ago. We were at Seneca Rocks in West Virginia. And my wife and I walked up to the top of that, and that really enlightened us on we needed to pick up the physical exertion a little bit, because that's Seneca Rocks is a pretty good climb.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's walk as much as you can. I mean, I walk all throughout the day. I don't know how many miles I can walk in one time, but it's one of those things. Let me see. One of the things I took from being on the fire department, practice working through fear, so you're afraid. Uh, so you're afraid. Big deal. Do it anyway. That's a skill that needs to be practiced. Yeah, I mean, and that's the calmness part of it. Staying calm in a situation, and then the whole physical fitness aspect of it. Get physically fit, get out there and do something. I mean, and then also if you're doing it, work up. If you know you can't walk a whole lot, build up and walk as much as you can. And once you get that down pretty easy, then throw your backpack on and throw some weight in it and start building from there.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, don't just walk during the day. Get out there and get on some back roads or something where you can walk at night, and that's going to help you work through the fear too. Because never fails, people get out there in the night and they start hearing some noises, and that gets them pretty well wound up. I had guys like that when I was in the Air Force, and I tell them, okay, what are you afraid of out there? Well, I'm afraid of the unknown. I said, well, you know what? The unknown out there should be afraid of you. You're the one carrying the automatic weapon. You're the one with the grenade launcher. Don't be afraid of what's out there. What's out there should be afraid of you. So people got to develop that mindset.
Oh yeah, and the same thing that's out there at night is the same thing that's out there in the daytime.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know how many times we'll do a live or something like this, or I'll be at church and I've got to bring the animals in. I'm not scared one bit to go out there in the pitch dark and just walk and bring the animals in. It's no big deal whatsoever. I'm like, I'm not scared. I mean, it's the same stuff that's out there at noon. So, and it's not like we got great big grizzly bears or anything like that. I mean, the worst thing, we got coyotes, but our livestock guard dogs, there hasn't been a coyote on the property since we got those livestock guard dogs. So,
and too, you get out there, livestock like wildlife too. If you know what to look for or what's normal, you're going to be able to tell if something's off and there's something you need to be concerned about.
Yeah, and Forrest said he ran 25 miles in basic and peak shape. I know the 42-mile walk home will take me 2 days. Forrest is doing pretty good. That's 21 miles a day. That's humping it.
Yeah, and that's very doable. You figure if you're walking 3 miles an hour, that's just 7 hours of walking each day. As long as you don't run into any problems or have to go to an alternate route or get off the road and hide, do anything like that.
Oh yeah. Forrest, you ought to start walking. You ought to start tomorrow, start walking up here for the festival, and you can get here early, I bet. So, but yeah, Jeff, we've been going on about an hour. Usually we kind of keep these about an hour. What else can you tell people about what you're going to talk about at the festival? Any kind of parting thoughts, anything like that, of what you got going on, and also tell everybody where they can find you. Social media, website, stuff like that. Okay,
well, social media is easy. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, Everyday Prepper. Everydayprepper.com is my website. Some of the other things, I want to talk about a few of the other products I got. I carry, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Hardcore Hammers. I carry some of their hatchets, got a few of their axes. I carry a product from a company called Roving Blue, and they are ozone water purifiers. Ozone's one of the best things you can use to kill bacteria in water.
Okay.
I've got some of their water purifiers there. I'm an affiliate for Mirror Safety Products with gas masks and some of the other things they carry. I'll have some of them there where folks can look at them. That with the old tools, I mean, you're not going to see too many other folks at homesteading festivals or prepper shows that are carrying some of the stuff that I carry. And I want to let folks know this is going to be our last event of the year, so I'm going to have some really good deals. I'm going to try to get it so I have to pack up as little as possible, because then I won't have to put it away someplace for the winter when I get home. Oh yeah. Now you're going to have all this stuff at our festival, correct? Yep, sure am. And I'm also an affiliate for Jackery solar generators, and I'm going to have my 1500 there with at least one of the solar panels, so people can check it out, and I can answer questions about that. We've used ours for a lot of things, and I know Jake Drum has used that's where I learned about Jackery products was from him, and Jake
Yeah.
got me all tuned into that. So yeah, I had to pick up and get involved with Jackery.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I'm looking forward to looking at all the old hand tools. I love old hand tools. I've got old planes and old stuff like that and everything. And I buy them when I see them, and I'll set them up on one of the bookcases in the house. So I use them as decorations, but they're also functional. I've actually got an old hand riveting tool, like to rivet clothes and stuff like that. I found it. I'm like, this thing's cool. The guy wanted like $10. I was like, yeah, I'll give you $10 for the thing. So
Yeah, and people walk by a lot of good deals on tools like that, and mainly because they don't really know what they're used for or how to use them.
yeah,
And that's one thing I like to educate along with selling this stuff. I like to educate people on this stuff. So, and whenever I do the old tools class, that's I tell people how to get these things at low cost the way I get them. And so if they can find a good deal, fine. Or if they're not going to do that, I can make it a little bit easier for them. They can just stop by my booth.
yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, guys, I'm glad everybody joined in tonight. Jeff, I appreciate it a bunch. We've got, guys, don't forget the 28th and 29th, Bowling Green, Kentucky is our festival. Jeff is going to be there. He's going to be speaking. He's also got his booth that he has set all the tools he'd have. It's in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Our website is KentuckySustainableLiving.com. We've got a ton of lineup of speakers. Go to the website and look at all the speakers. See those guys. We've got a ton of vendors, everything from the tools Jeff has been talking about to hoop houses to storm shelters to portable sheds, soap, freeze-dried food, medical supplies, tactical nylon gear. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. And don't forget, Friday, the 27th, we've got 2 paid classes. We've got Chuck that's doing Homestead Medical class, and then we've also got Eric Johnson, Porterhouse and Teal. He is doing a plant guild class where you're actually going to go out and plant tree guilds in the afternoon after you've learned about it in the class. And then we've also got Vets for Child Rescue charity dinner on Saturday night. You can get tickets for all the stuff on our website. And to come to the festival and attend the festival is 100% free. But that's about all I've got tonight. Guys, I appreciate y'all being here, the comments. And Jeff, I appreciate you hanging out with me tonight.
I appreciate you having me, Jason. And are you going to still have the drawings or whatever there at the banquet?
Yes, we're gonna have a where we've got raffle stuff. We're gonna be selling raffle tickets for some items, for some giveaway items. But for the banquet, we've got we're gonna do a silent auction for some of that kind of stuff.
Well, and I just wanted to tell you, we talked about this a while ago, and we'll let you know now. I'm going to donate a hardcore hammer hatchet. Awesome. And a Roving Blue Ozopod 10 home ozone generator.
All right. For the charity dinner to do a silent auction. That's awesome. I appreciate that a bunch.
Well, it's a very good cause, and I'm happy to be part of that.
Yep, and the goal is to raise $10,000, and if we raise $10,000, Forrest told me that they would come to Kentucky and get some of these scumbag bastards off the streets and put them where they need to be. And if it was up to me, we would wood chip them right then and there.
So, there you go. So, I like the way you think.
Oh, yeah. But I appreciate everybody being here, and we will see y'all next Friday for another live.